Pecha Kucha 279 almost killed by Jojo references. So I did say last week I was probably going to start looking at my book after a tremendously awful night's sleep going into Monday. I kind of screwed around all day and then I kind of had to resolve to do something. And then by the end of the week, I was watching Jojo's Bizarre Adventure memes on the internet. Let's talk a little bit more about what happened. So after kind of just struggling to kind of stay awake and be compos mentis on Monday, like towards the evening, I was just like, fuck, I need to do something. I've just been scrolling down on YouTube all day and suddenly there's no day left. So I started just sketching the first thing that came to mind, which was a picture of a predator. And I was like, let's airbrush it because I'm enjoying just putting down a lot of, black and grey, using the blur tool to smudge it out and then like trying to apply lighting after the effect. Typically what I do is very dark, and I was like, well, here's a great idea. Let's draw something dark. And then I was like, let's add lighting. This is a predator doing that thing he did in that first movie where he used some kind of laser on a skull for some reason. I don't know what he's doing. No thought went into this. This was very much the case of let's do something more productive than doing something unhelpful. So then I, used either a multiplier or overlay color layer. So I'm literally just adding the color directly onto the gray and they just blend. I keep the values while adding the color, and I'm just like, for a couple of hours work, this is what I could do if I, can get out my own way. And then on Tuesday, it occurred to me I've never drawn M. Bison doing a Psycho Crusher, so I was like, well, yeah, now that's what we're gonna do, and that's what I did. And I actually bothered to reference a hand because it's really the composition lives and dies on the biggest mistake I've made, and the biggest thing in the picture is the hand, so I don't want it to be obviously wrong. I did a couple of layers of line work for this. I was intending to airbrush it but completely forgot. I used vector layers to draw the robot in the background, and while it's completely wrong in terms of like the maths of the perspective, because it's ultimately a background element that gets lost in the noise of special effects, onomatopoeia, and all the rest of it. I'm quite happy with where I ended up with this. I don't typically put this much time or effort into one of these, and it didn't feel forced. The whole point of doing the Tuesday Bisons is that I do a piece of work and I get out before I feel like I'm being too clean, I'm trying to be too professional, because that's the stuff that slows you down and it's the easiest thing to screw up. And I love like global lighting, so I just put an overlay orange layer on top because it's like, well, there's an explosion, so everything should be explosion colored. It's still not quite what I wanted it to be, but I'm happy enough with it that it's the win of the week. Bink Bonk has started reducing every episode of Dragon Ball GT to a minute. And it's so bad. I'd always heard Dragon Ball GT was so bad, but even only seeing a minute per episode, you can see all the missteps, which is the reason that the show has basically been retconned out of existence. I look forward to watching the rest at a minute each just to see how much worse it gets, but I think it's probably as bad as it's going to get. I drew a terrible airbrush picture of Captain America without reference while I was having a phone call with someone, just to be somewhat productive. I'm probably never going back to it. I did read some Batman comics this week, and that just made me want to copy some Jason Fabrock art of Bruce Wayne. That's why some of these pictures are terrible, my usual stuff, and why some of them have a much stronger composition, etc., etc. Just dipping in and out of reference like this, I think, is the most wholesome way for me to go forward, incorporating more quality into what I do. I also had a hankering to draw Megatron. I found an old picture of Megatron I hadn't finished that was based on someone else's picture of Megatron I was using as reference, but it was awfully complicated. What a surprise I tapped out. But I was like, well, what can we do using this as a base layer? Let's draw on top of it and let's see if we can do something. Just using like kind of a very small airbrush. We want to kind of create form. We're not too worried about clean line work. The trick with these things is to not give the viewer an obvious tell that the perspective is wrong. You can draw giant robots with curved lines. So really I was spending my time adding superfluous detail, adding form, trying to draw Megatron so he's got like weight and he's thick, and it's like, this is the dude that turns into the tank. And I think that I got it to a place I was quite happy with. I don't know that I'll continue with this for another 2 years. We'll see. So I just saw a clip from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure of like Dio's in the back of a car. He's the big bad boss. And the dude at the front of the car, he forces him to drive the car. He doesn't want to, so he gets out of the car and he runs to the left and ends up tripping and falling back into the car. It's one of the coolest things I've ever seen in animation, and it was the start of me falling into a black hole of JoJo references in my YouTube feed. I immediately came across a fucking YouTube channel that was pretty much nothing but JoJo memes, and I was watching that for maybe, I don't know, it could have been more than half an hour. And by the end of it, I was like, God damn, I'm exhausted. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is the kind of thing I'd like, but it's pretty all in. Another thing about Dio, he's a vampire. The good guys find him in his coffin. They get a stooge to open the coffin, and when the stooge opens the coffin, he finds he's in the coffin, which is both a hilarious joke, and it shows you how dangerous the last boss of the show is, because basically he can stop time, and what he does with this ability through the show is troll people like motherfuckers by making impossible things happen. And in one of the animated versions of the manga, there's no way for you to know what's happened because there's no audio or visual cue, and it's fucking awesome. Yeah. I also did spend Smiley Saturday doing a little bit of Smiley Show production work. This drip Goku joke, I'm going to take it. I took it as far as I can take it. Now I have to fucking actually pad it out by drawing it, adding the speech bubbles. And I feel like I'm going to have to change the words because some of these jokes maybe aren't very good. Like there's an idea in there that's funny, but it's not. The words need to be expertly applied. We will see. The thing with Smiley Saturdays, it's just to dip the toe, just like Bison Tuesdays. Build a schedule of doing things without the pressure of needing them to be done, and over time build a habit of actually doing stuff. I have a sneaking suspicion February is going to be a lot like January. I do think that I'm achieving good results distancing myself from gaming without it necessarily increasing my work output, because it's not one problem, it's two separate problems. Spend my time better and stop wasting as much of my time. Taking them as two separate problems makes them easier to deal with. It's very touch and go, and I feel a little bit like a guy in Alcoholics Anonymous, like I can count the days, right, since I decided to do this. And I imagine there's going to be more of this going forward in the immediate future. So that's the end of Pecha Kucha 279, and I will see you next time.